Hello, I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me and what a pleasure. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, it's an honor and a privilege. Your work is incredible, and I want the people to hear your work. So
Thank
I'm
you.
going to do a quick bio for you, and then we're going to let you do your thing.
Okay. Thank
So,
you.
Geraldine, we've had her on the show before. She's a certified hypnotherapist, neurolinguistic practitioner, pranic energy practitioner, quantum energy practitioner. It says diamond next to it. I believe it's probably a level, right, Geraldine?
No, I think that might be a typo.
Oh,
It
okay.
doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean
Gotcha.
anything.
Meditation master,
Yes.
mindfulness based stress reduction therapist, and a Qualgon master, shamanic energy medicine. She's also the founder and CEO of the San Francisco based Bay Area Meditation, which offers virtual corporate meditation programs. Founder, CEO of higherhealing.com, virtual holistic intuitive wellness nexus and social director. We love that. Holistic healing is
Yeah.
amazing. And she is the founder of hybridmother.com, which is an international research and support group for experiencers of hybrid parents and the ID phenomena. So, with that being said, Geraldine, I will give you the floor, and I am excited to see what you're going to do and bring to the table today. So,
I am too. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Let me go ahead and share the screen. And we're going to get started here. I'm going to walk you through a presentation. I guess we're going to have to share the whole screen, and then I will open my presentation. Let me see. Oh,
Do you want
interesting.
it full screen or do you want to be on the side over here?
I'd love to be on the side. That would be great.
Gotcha.
Yeah, let's just stay there.
Gotcha.
Let me figure out how to do this, though, because sometimes it's a little tricky. Let's see. All right. Let's see if I can go into presentation mode. How are you guys seeing this? Unfortunately, I can't see both at the same
I
time.
see
Let
it
me
as
see.
it's a little bit smaller.
It's a little small. Yeah. Okay, 1 second. Let me fix that really quickly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's PowerPoint can be a tricky thing, you know.
I know. Oh, here it is. Now it's showing. There we go.
Got it.
We got it. Yeah,
There we
sometimes
go.
the StreamYard is a little tricky with PowerPoint,
It
but there
is
we go.
because you have to like enlarge it within the window and then it
Yes.
it has to work properly. So boom, Dina, I will leave.
Nice. Thank you. All right, everybody. Well, it is honestly an honor to be here. It is a pleasure to be here, and thank you to Rob and his wonderful team for putting this together. Everyone that's here and the incredible speakers that were showing up today. I am going to take you through a little journey where we're going to take a look at some interesting information regarding our past and the engineering that takes place in order to create a society in which we are now a product of. And what I'd like to take your attention through as we take a look at all this information, it's going to be a lot of information. I'm going to move a little quick. I'm sure you can see the replay later, but we're going to take a look at if there is such social engineering in our society, how can we change that? How can we understand social engineering, how it happened, and learn the inside mechanics of that in order to now change it into our own access of creation, our own spiritual engineering, so to speak. So let me quickly take you into a little journey of how I started with the work that I'm doing today. Rob already gave you a quick overview of what I do. And basically, my life work is focused on assisting people in activating their conscious experiences, activating their DNA, activating their abilities. And how can I speak to this topic? Have I experienced that? Well, in 2013, I had an incredible conscious contact experience in which I was taken out of my bedroom here in Union City, California, and I was taken on board a craft into this light craft, this light orb, in which I was introduced to massive amounts of information. And in this information, I was introduced to these tall grays that were about 6, 7 feet tall, and they were Pleiadian grays. Somehow they were connected with the Pleiadians, in which they introduced me through my personal Pleiadian lineage to information that I had been working with Pleiadians previously. An aspect of myself was interacting with them. And more importantly, they introduced me to children. And these children were a reflection of me. When I saw them, I immediately recognized them, almost as if I was looking at a long lost brother, or a family member. I don't have children here on earth, but the feeling, this incredible instinctual maternal feeling that overcomes you, and the connection and the telepathic exchange that occurs with these beings when you see them for the first time, was life-changing. Because upon connecting with the child and making eye contact with them, immediately I began to recall memories. I began to remember previous experiences, in fact, throughout my entire life, repetitive dreams that were occurring since childhood, of one of these children being brought to me, in particular, this little blonde girl. And these are my drawings. But when this little girl would be presented to me by my mother in this dream, I would have this dream repetitively from the age of 5 until the age about 12 years old, but it would always be the exact same way. And when I would wake up abruptly. And for some reason, I would always remember waking up from that dream. I would remember vividly the feelings, my surroundings. It was like a very clear picture. In addition to that, I would have experiences where I would have missing time as a child. And I began to recall these memories that at the age of 5, 7, 8, 13, 15, even during the times that I lived in South America for school, I had missing time experiences where immediately as a result of that, I began to feel very strange physically. And these kinds of changes began to affect my life, although I didn't understand the connection between extraterrestrials or the interdimensional contact with what was occurring to me physically. So what this resulted in is a lifelong understanding that I had been a contactee all my life. And I wanted to dive deeper into this information. In 2017, I decided to get a hypnotherapy session. And at this time, I had been meditating and deprogramming myself from all matrix programming to the point where I brought myself into a state of complete neutrality, complete clarity. I didn't watch television for years, didn't watch anything, music, or anything to stimulate my mind or implant ideas or memories. It was a complete purification moment. And of course, this journey started very early on in 2009 when I funded Bay Area Meditation here in California. And the purpose of that was to share with others the incredible results that I had been discovering with my own meditation work. And I believe that in 2013, because of those years of working, it allowed me to reach a certain point, vibrational frequency, in which I was in alignment with having these kinds of experiences. The veil was thinning. My abilities were activating. And immediately after that contact experience, on Monday, I incredibly had the ability of seeing the multidimensional body. And even though at that time I tried to look back at the experience and maybe question whether it was a dream, whether it was something, that wasn't real, with tangible evidence, the evidence for me was that from one day to the next, I had these incredible psychic abilities that I could not even go to the grocery store. I couldn't go shopping. I was incredibly sensitive. I had burning sensations on my skin. I had literally marks on my feet from walking outside. It was just completely physical. These dimensions had merged, and I had experienced something that was beyond, physical and our understanding of the physical reality. And during this session, continuing this meditation work, continuing this deprogram, and I'm going to be explaining exactly what it means to deprogram in just a second, because it plays an incredible role, as you can see, through the experience of my life, in order to have these kinds of contact experiences, in order to discern what is reality or how we perceive reality. I began to channel incredible amounts of information in these hypnotherapy sessions. I was taken all the way back to the origin of life, in which I was shown information in Mesopotamia regarding the origins. I was shown the cubic form of the Kaaba, and I was shown the substance within the Kaaba, the black rock. I was shown how this was a substance which was named more recently by a researcher by the name of goo. And goo, which is this intelligent substance, is something that interacts with humans in order to provide this incredible parasitic exchange that occurs when you interact with it. But further to that, I began to recall experiences as a child where I was being utilized in order to remote view and also mobilize some movements with the military in combination with draconians that were utilizing this goo and placing them in different aspects of the world in order to create these exchanges, especially in places where large groups of people gather in order to absorb life force energy, absorb emotions, heavy, negative emotions or fearful emotions. And it was basically a way of survival. It was a survival. It was source of life force that was being created. Now, at the time, all of this information was very strange to me because I had never before read or heard or anything. This was absolutely nowhere near my understanding at that time. And I was shown in a map these three main bloodlines that came to the earth. It was a green one, a red one, and a blue one. And these three main bloodlines are the ones that are connected to specific races that are descendants of these draconians. The interesting thing about this is that these bloodlines indicate the amount of information which each one of these species have access to. However, through the development of mankind, since the origin of life seeding on this planet, we are a product of that. And basically, these main bloodlines have gone down through history in order to create the reality and the human race that we are today. Now, this was very interesting because it was shown to me on a map similar to this visually, in how these races had been the specific bloodlines, families of bloodlines have been incredibly preserved historically in order to maintain information. Because as you will find out in this presentation today, what DNA is a bank of information. It is source of information. It is the access code to the universal understanding of our environment and what we see as reality, as well as interdimensional realities, which we are constantly moving in and out of. So these bloodlines have developed, and if we take a look at and trace back, which I have done extensively, and I will be having this in my upcoming book, regarding how these bloodlines have literally manifested and developed into the races, into the different cultures, the countries where language came in, different languages, different races, different even skin colors, and the cultural influences that these races have had, although seemingly different, in fact, had a certain origin point in which most of the storylines which are informing religions and cultural habits are very much rooted in these Mesopotamian roots. And that really tells us something about our origin and how things are manifested, but it also tells us how and why we are where we're at today. Our understanding of reality is incredibly inverted. In fact, the things that we believe are real by what social media and media have been telling us, and also the government for several years now, since, and I'll go back into this, but a lot of this information is actually quite covered, as many of you know. And the information that was shown to me was how we have so many movements, financial movements, that benefit these very small groups of family members that are maintaining in order to create systems that are complex and are codependent of only one thing, and that is power. And in this power, creating and mobilizing certain agendas that they're moving weaponry, You know, they are dealing with different countries in ways that the exchanges are more pro the production of these corporations and lobbyists that are funded by main banking systems, as opposed to something that is for the well-being of the collective. And so when you have these major groups monopolizing these important systems in which we believe we survive from, we end up having a civilization in which we are more destructive in how we behave in the things that we're doing. Of course, we're not understanding how that happens, but today we're going to take a look at how that is. And mind control and the influence of these groups is so incredibly powerful that it creates and designs the way that we behave and navigate our everyday life. And if we look closely, historically, to the origins of these lineages, as well as those movements that have been made historically, we begin to see surfacing a lot of truths about, how people were dealt with in Africa, all the way back since colonization in South America, all the way to how we are managing ourselves in the US today. Whether we are glued to our cell phones or we are drugged through food, there is a certain specific model to how humans are interacting with the world we're in today. And this is a problem because, as we see in the world today, it is going more towards illness and self-destruction as opposed to empowerment. And the more we understand how these systems are interconnected, the more we will understand how we can move forward. So if we trace the majority of these systems, they go to all of these main lineages, these main bloodlines that are actually now in the center hold of the elite. And the elite being these main names that are the owners of 147 companies, which actually own all of the companies on this planet Earth. So let's say the Bilderberg, for example, who owns companies in every single sector of reality. And if we keep going deeper into that and we follow the money, which is the most important thing to do when we're making decisions about what we do in our life, is that we begin to understand where these main heads are. Let's just briefly look at the pharmaceutical industries, how many of them are now owners of, for example, Bayer bought out Monsanto's, which owns 80% of the food production and crops around the world. And they are indirectly owned by sub-companies that, even though we might think they're separate, and even though they might claim to be natural or whatever it is, there's a lot of very confusing little trails that you really need to do research and understand where actually our money is going. And so it really plays a role in, we look at today and what's happening in the world today, in how things have kind of fallen into place over the past 2 years, which is the beginning of a major shift over the next 4 years that will really change the way that we see ourselves, technology, health, and the well-being of mankind. But if we follow these banks, all of these companies are mainly umbrellaed under these major banking systems, which most of them are in China and also Japan. And these main names keep popping up over and over again. And I'm sure this information is not new. This information is quite known now. But the interesting thing about this, and what was shown to me on that map, is that what I discovered these names is through following the bloodlines. Because the main bloodlines that originated in Mesopotamia, these are the descendants of those bloodlines, which tells us something about our makeup. It's not to say that these bloodlines are separate from us, because we are descendants of these lineages as well, we hold aspects of these bloodlines within us. And I'll go deeper into that. But if we look at the systems that are in control now, the majority of them are within these related bloodlines, and the connections are on and on and on. This is a very, very, small picture of what we're talking about here. So these main bloodlines are the ones that are the architects of our reality. And what it means is that the information that we have within these bloodlines that originated in the Draconians, we are descendants of that Draconian lineage. And from the Draconian lineage descended all of the races, the ET races that are populating or that we're aware of in this matrix multiverse. But these bloodlines are the ones that inform aspects of our own body. We have aspects of this. We have, these whatever names, reptilian, Pleiadian, whatever names that we associate with the different races of the universe, we have them within our DNA. And so the interesting thing about that is that our DNA, in other words, is heavily genetically modified since the origin of life here on this planet. And we are a product of that genetic modification. But we are modified in many different ways, and I'm going to go over some of those ways with you. One of the ways is by the sun, the frequencies, the energies that are emitting from the core solar center of this galaxy. And how we understand that is that the galaxy functions in this spherical form, which creates its own resonance in the place in the universe. And any information that is coming or any information that we're moving through vibrationally is affecting all the living beings within this galaxy. And so the sun, because it's the largest mass at the center of this galaxy, functions like a satellite that absorbs that information and then spreads it out into the other planets. And each one of the planets represents a different vibrational frequency that translates the information in a different way. And the planet Earth is one of those such planets. It also processes information in a certain way, and so do its organisms, which is us. We are the organisms that reside on this Earth. But this goes really deeper into the, creation of ourselves. So let's take a look at now going into micro, what is DNA? So the way that DNA functions through the mitochondrial DNA, which is where the majority of the information is stored of our genetic origins, not just from our ancestral lineage, but our, let's say, galactic origins, the origins of our inception of life here, comes down the mitochondrial bloodline, because the mitochondrial bloodline is a snapshot of all the previous generations that are recorded within that genetic code. And so we hold this information. The majority of it is seen as dark DNA or junk DNA, in which it's not spoken of publicly in how to translate that information. But the way to access that information is not going to be through reading just simply the code. It is a holographic system of information that has to be translated in a non-physical manner. And that information is accessed through ourselves, through the activation of our intuitive abilities, the 5th, 6th, 7th, up to the 13th senses of the multidimensional body. So our body is affected by our environment, by our emotions, our choices, the foods we eat. Everything is changing and crafting this organism, which is really important because it really designs the way that we navigate this physical plane. The physical plane, which when we come into the physical body, we are attaching to an ancestral lineage, is recording the cyclical patterns of behaviors from all the ancestors leading back to the origin of time. And that information is what we play out. That's the information when we are not conscious of the bigger picture. We are always referencing back to this information. And so it becomes limiting in a way because you're only pulling from a very limited and very small part of your own personal data. When the soul comes into the physical body, it attaches to these lineages. It attaches to your ancestral lineage, but you are always completely connected to all the dimensional planes, all the way up to the 13th plane. And of course, we have many more dimensions to our body. But what I'd like to clarify is that these dimensional planes are not separate from us. We are the dimensional planes. We are the center of the universe, which we're living and experiencing. Everything begins and ends with us. We are the alpha and the omega. What does that mean? That means that every single one of these dimensional planes is a holographic expression of the information that we have within our energy centers of the body, the chakras. They are the main organs that produce chemicals that allow the body to navigate and understand its environment. And this is really incredibly important, because if we go back to this understanding of who creates and designs our reality, then we have to pay very close attention to how we navigate this reality. How the multidimensional body looks is like this. We are an incredibly vast network of fragments of ourselves. When we come into the multidimensional body, into the three-dimensional plane, this three-dimensional body only holds an aspect of yourself when you are conscious of it. When you become awake and activate your intuitive abilities, when you begin to deprogram the matrix layers of programming, you then have the ability of accessing other fragments of yourself. And this is what happened to me through my work, that I had been deprogramming all of the false ideas of what I thought I was, what this world was, what the roles that we have to play, the ideas around everything, emotions, creation, all of these ideas that the human plays and the roles that we play here as humans becomes completely destructed, because you begin to understand why we believe what we believe. And that's important, because what you realize after doing that kind of work is that we will end up at a 0 point in which we see ourselves as nothing, but at the same time, everything, because we understand that there is no separation, that the veil of illusion of compartmentalized reality actually isn't true. It is truly an illusion that is constructed for a reason. So our fragments now become available to us. People that meditate a lot and do this kind of work have access to past lives. They begin to lucid dream. They begin to astral travel. They have access to the Akashic records. We have access to our extraterrestrial abilities. We begin to see ghosts. We begin to interact with these other dimensional planes. And it's not that they weren't there before, it's that we were not aware of it. Awareness is a vibrational expression. It's a vibrational signature that has to be developed. It has to be cultivated from the multidimensional body. And the more we do to deprogram false programs, we can embody that kind of understanding of our reality. And this is where we begin to work with the information. We have this three-dimensional network in which we come in to groups. The soul, when it comes into this fragment, this meat suit, or this physical body, is just one fragment of all of the fragments that are living simultaneously at this time. That's why some people can experience simultaneous healing. For example, they can go access a fragment of themselves that is healed in a future self and bring it into the present moment and help themselves process through cancers or illnesses or ailments within their body. So we begin to understand literally the architecture of our reality. Okay, the first three chakras are where we are mainly managed, manipulated when we are unconscious, because these three centers are the three-dimensional plane. They are your safety, they are your sexuality and your creative life forces, your exchanges, and they are your empowerment, the way that you see yourself, the emotions. The emotional body. The emotional body is actually what is mostly weaponized against the human when the human is unaware and unconscious of how these systems operate. And so obviously the human ends up with a torn multidimensional body, a sick multidimensional body, emotionally, and of course that translates into the physical. So for example, the organs begin to take a toll. And because I can see the multidimensional body, I have been able to put together the map of where this information collects within the body. But what I've understood and what I've researched, not just through my personal experience, because I came into this understanding completely organically without having studied previously, is that this is something that has been known for centuries, since the very beginning of time. The Asian medicine, Eastern medicine, really focuses on this incredibly in complex networks of energy in the body, which they understood. And I know that they had the ability of accessing that information organically, just as I had. So it means you can too. And how we enter that awareness is through the deprogramming of that genetic information. And that's where the multidimensional body begins to come alive. Through the hypnosis experiences, I was also able to navigate down to the molecular level what our genetic code looks like, how it operates. And I was shown that every single molecule is oscillating to create a toroidal field. And in fact, this toroidal field of vibrational frequency is what creates the massive networks of information that our entire human body is. So we are this holographic structure. It's incredibly intelligent, advanced technology. So we are very much holographic. And it is really just incredible the way that the mind, the brain stores information. There have been several endless experiments on this that you can look up, is that when the way that a organism stores information is not in a specific part of the brain, it is in the entire network of the body. So every organ, every muscle, every single aspect of the body is constantly absorbing 360 degrees its information, even the information that we're not aware of. So this is a picture of that DNA that is oscillating, that they photographed oscillating, creating this incredible field, these incredible systems of information. And it is really very beautiful how the body has the ability to regenerate cyclically, cleanse, and regenerate over and over again. Everything works in cycles, the human organism as well as the earth organism. So the human genetic code that is holographic is able to store, basically in 1 teaspoon of DNA, you can store the entire world's history as it was told to us. But even more so, if you can imagine how much information our human body holds on to, we really have non-physical memory. We have a snapshot of the entire universe within our body, and to each person, it could be slightly different. So let's take a look at the sensory body. How does the sensory body work? When we smell, through the 5 senses is our way of navigating the physical realm. Through the taste, the sound, our eyes, this is how we communicate in the physical realm. When we're working with our environment, we are influenced subliminally through sound. I'm sorry, strange music passing by. We are incredibly influenced by sound, by what the colors that we see, because this is a vibrational frequency that's responding to the creation within the physical body. The chakras, the color of the chakras, the range are ranges of frequency within the body, which are translated through color. That is the language of this three-dimensional plane. And we know this because it's heavily used in marketing. In fact, the father of marketing and actually creating the entire PR aspect of America was Edward Bernays, which is actually, he was the nephew of Freud. And Freud really talked in complexity about how there is subliminal, subconscious understanding, psychological understanding of its environment. And usually the human isn't aware, because they're not aware, is not aware of their profound needs and expressions and desires. And so what he did was that he used that inverted logic in order to insert into society those needs, to provide them those needs, but inserting the agenda of, linking these corporates, these products, these things. And so he was able to sell millions and millions of dollars of everything because he was able to utilize this inverted logic. But of course, this kind of manipulation of the way that we see the world is a deep understanding of how the multidimensional body works. And if we understand how this has really affected us through history, it has formed our entire reality. These vibrational frequencies in the body, our emotions are manipulated. They are vibrational frequency. Each one of the chakras are connected to the organs, which express chemicals that begin to move through the body that create changes. And when they're often negative, they create inflammation, illnesses. And this is beneficial for some of those corporations, particularly in well, all areas from food to pharmaceuticals. If you are in a state of survival, you will be easily moving through, looking externally for things to help you. So we know what GMO is. It's genetically modified. And we think about vegetables that are genetically modified. And of course, there's so much talk about how some of these vegetables are not good for us. But do we ever think about ourselves as being genetically modified? Because when we look at our history, we are basically a product of this social engineering on such a profound level. And now we are really going to the next step. Jianku, who is a doctor that did the very first CRISPR babies, removing AIDS from their genetic code, was one of the first twins that were born genetically modified. Well, at least in public eye, right? Because they have been experimenting on this for a very long time. But this genetic modification goes even further. Our DNA editing is really an effect of not just environment, but through our own self. It also happens on the etheric body. And I know we're kind of running a little on time, so I'm going to move past this a little bit. I want to get to a really important part about all of this. The genetic code that is edited through these experiences is also happening in the etheric level. Okay, so just those slides were about how it happens in the physical, and I think most of us knows how gene editing functions, and also hybridization, right? So we historically, hybridization has been something that has been in our history since the beginning of time, and we have that in ancient records, in scriptures. We have that in petroglyphs inscribed around the world in many different countries in the world, and ancient powerful civilizations that have spoken about this kind of hybridization, not just with our own human race, but with other higher intelligent races and interdimensional beings. And so we are a product of that. We are experiencing that in our human body now. And it doesn't only happen in the physical body, it occurs etherically. It's my belief that perhaps our entire human race is experiencing hybridization without being aware of it. Because there is a point, and I hear this every single day in my support groups, that people never thought about aliens before, but when they had this incredibly powerful experience after doing some spiritual work, they began to recall these memories. And whether this is some kind of collective psychosis that we're going through, or we are truly experiencing this kind of hybridization experiences, I think it's very important to research and question these experiences that we're having. So these beings are breeding with ourselves. They are taking our genetic information, and some of these races are not capable of reproducing biologically. And they're not capable of reproducing biologically because of the vibrational frequency in which they are. And in order to be able to feed from the life force expression that the human body provides in a three-dimensional plane, it is necessary to take some of that genetic information and mix it to create other organisms. These organisms are managed through many different hybridization programs. There are many of them. I'm going to come back to this. But through that creation of love energy, or not love, but the sexual union that occurs at the time of conception, is instrumental to designing and creating the organism that is being created. So there are negative programs and there are also positive note programs. Let me move through that. This is very interesting in regards to how we are combining with different races. I have been a part of 4 different hybridization programs: a draconian, reptilian, Pleiadian, and human, the terrestrial. And the terrestrial program was managed by the military. And who is at the very back end of that military program is organized by the draconian lineages. Okay, and I hear this time and time again from other experiencers and also people that are part of the secret space program that have also shared their experiences and their interactions in some of these programs on off planet. So it's very interesting how the human body functions in that case when we're dealing with this hybridization. Is that even when we believe that we're astral projecting, when we're unaware of the physical body, we become hosts. Just the way we were talking about earlier, that the multidimensional body, the auric field, becomes torn. Well, when we're navigating out of the physical body, whether we're in lucid dreaming, astral projection, these are the gateways, because the next step to that is death. We enter into these vortices, into these portals of energy that move us into other dimensional planes. And in those other dimensional planes, you are also experiencing in some way an expression of parasitic consciousness, and consciousness that rejects its own consciousness is parasitic. So therefore the exchange becomes uneven, and the human that is unaware becomes an attachment, a host for all kinds of parasitic consciousness and disruption. So all of these attachments cause an effect on the neurological system. So what can you do to fix this? Now, the way that this universe is moving, right, is moving in this form of this spiral. And the way that each one of these dimensional planes is designed is that it is designed in the form like this Fibonacci sequence, that each one of these dimensional planes have a certain layers of dimensions. So when we access any one of these dimensional planes, we are accessing certain vibrational planes of information, of frequencies, of manifestation of life forms, different beings. And even though the way that they look can be manipulated or changed, what we're interacting with is consciousness, either consciousness or the rejection of consciousness. And because everything functions in this fractal self-similar model, where what happens as above, so below, what happens microscopic is happening macro, we need to understand that once we understand those laws of creation in the 3-dimensional plane, we have 100% ability of deciding how to navigate that dimensional plane. And the human organism, if it heals, if it becomes awake, if it activates its higher centers, if it activates its higher dimensions, it can begin to merge into those higher dimensions, navigate those dimensions. And when we do, we have more mastery over the physical, over matter. We have the ability of healing, of transmuting any lower frequency emotions into high emotions. And ultimately, it brings the body into this natural state of self-regeneration that is possible, just like nature. Nature is the most beautiful and perfect example of how balance of organisms in going through all of these cyclical patterns of regeneration operate. So we want to get closer to nature in order to mimic that, to embody that kind of orgone, that creation life force energy, which is only possible when we now have activated, when we have cleansed, when we have deprogrammed these kinds of false programming within the multidimensional body. The incredible ability is that we have the ability of removing these attachments, of clearing them out of the body and bringing ourselves back. The most powerful state for the human body is to not be in a state of hypnosis. Because of all of this programming, hypnosis is one of the master key tools to put the human into this sleep, this inverted reality, which is manipulated profoundly from every sense of this physical body, which rules the physical plane. So we have to be able to understand how that works, how it's connected to the nervous system, to the neurological system, and the organs, in order to no longer be puppets to this kind of a destructive system. I'm just going to move forward here. There are many different ways that we can take back our understanding of our creation and who is creating. Either you are being created or you are creating. So in order for the human to come into creation, we have to come into that singularity, that point of singularity, which is where we understand that we are everything and nothing at the same time, where we are creating this incredible um, beautiful moving vortex of life force that is now able to generate life force instead of deplete itself of that life force. So you are this prima materia, you are that the ability to create. And through the alchemy of those emotions and the mastery of consciousness, awareness, presence in the present moment now, and training yourself in dream time, training yourself in the astral plane, in projection, we begin to activate the higher powers of the multidimensional body. And this is how the human begins to heal and gently disconnect from all of those deprogrammings. And what that's going to look like is that you're going to begin to see a completely different reality. You're going to notice that everything that the world is showing you is inverted. It's inverted. And it's very complex. I remember when I first became aware of this, it was unbelievable. I was so surprised at every moment how I was noticing the inversions in the reality, and I was noticing that my body would no longer respond to them. Because when you heal fragments of yourself from that trauma, you're basically dealing with trauma and fragmentation that occurs at the soul level. All of those fragments that make up your multidimensional body are created through trauma. And the system, this multidimensional system, this organic system of hybridization, benefits from your fragmentation because you are more enmeshed in the three-dimensional plane, and there is more lack of awareness from your center of the universe, from your organism. So although we are one, we are collectively healing and moving, the more of us that come into this awareness, we maintain a very strong balance in the collective instead of so much chaos. There's always this duality that we're experiencing in the three-dimensional plane, but we want to move towards that point of singularity where we are not going into the mechanic automaton type artificial intelligence. In fact, this is where our technology is headed now. Everything is going virtually online, and we are being programmed to become that artificial intelligence. That's the next step, and it's occurring through big pharma. It's occurring through the food. It's occurring through social engineering that is occurring in the world even today, now. So we want to become aware of that so we can reverse that interaction and that exchange. Okay, so one of the ways that you can do that is by beginning to work with your chakra system, and that is learning how to manage and control the first three chakras, working with the information that's there, dealing with your trauma, healing that trauma, which means reintegrating the fragments that were created throughout your entire life, from birth, from the womb, and then going back into your past lives. This is absolutely possible. I have done it myself. And, you know, it takes time and dedication, but if you're a parent, this should be a priority for you when you can, in your time. If you are any human on this planet right now, if you're a father, a mother, we want to try to instill it in the next generation that they are completely aware of how this system is structured so that they no longer end up being puppets, you know, to the system in such a incredible way. So I think we are out of time. Let me just come over here. Oh yeah, this is pretty much my last slide about balance. We want to create complete, perfect balance. How do you create that? It is the divine feminine, that masculine that unite to create life. And that simply just means awareness, complete awareness of the dark and the light that we are. And I talk a lot about this on my channel, so you guys can dive deeper into that. I'm kind of giving you an overview now. But if you wish to work with me, I am a certified hypnotherapist. I'm a member of the AHA. I'm an NLP practitioner, and all these other things. And my primary focus is to teaching people how to deprogram themselves. I call it DNA deprogramming. And through hypnotherapy, beginning to reintegrate fragments of your soul that are created through collective trauma, which is what we are a product of. So if you wish to work with me, please do check it out. I am also owner of hybridmother.com, and we have a international support group that you can go ahead and join us. We have some dates up on the calendar. Please do join us if you're an experiencer. You can also check out Extraordinary the Seeding, which is a documentary regarding hybridization, just to understand a little bit more about it. And that's it. Thank you so much for having me, and it was a pleasure.
Absolutely remarkable. That was incredible, Geraldine. I was fixated on the screen just watching and listening. It was almost like you were hypnotizing me during the event.
Oh, no.
It was so much information. It was so informative. I'm going to bring everybody on because I believe everybody probably has something to say. I mean, I enjoyed the part about the black goo. I enjoyed the part of the color coding for the propaganda and the way that they actually advertise to people. I mean, I could go on and on. It was an amazing presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. You know, these are, and I wish there was more time, because on every single one of these topics, you could talk probably a lot about them, because they are very complex topics. It's really not so simple. There's so much information to discuss about the origins, about history, about our government, about society. I mean, there's so much. So it really does take time, you know, to kind of inform yourself on those levels. But I think majority of your viewers are pretty up to date with a lot of that information. So I'm hoping.
We definitely cover some of it, but you went in depth. And just to show you, I mean, we've got beautiful presentation, wonderful, outstanding, so amazing. It was so great. You were connecting dots, and you know, a lot of that stuff, you hit the surface level and it becomes a little overwhelming. But the way you went about it was gentle, and you touched on all of it. Like you said, you can go further and further and further as you go through it. But the way it was subtle, it was perfect. It was right to the point. It was amazing.
Great.
Gerald,
I'm so glad to know. Thank you.
That was outstanding. I've seen some of your presentations on Portal to Ascension, and you know, every single time you've really hit the mark, right on the head. The question I have about hybridization is the children that are up in the craft. What happens with them? Do they get integrated into Earth, or do they get integrated onto a different planet to you know, go forth and multiply, kind of deal? Like you know, what's the end game with that?
Yeah, it's a very complex system, but I guess the way that I like to answer that question is for you to become aware that because we are fragmented, potentially we're being hybridized on more than one dimensional plane, which could be infinite, okay? Because there are, just myself, I was a part of 4 different programs that I'm aware of, right? And the way that the terrestrial program works, it takes biological information, but it also takes information from your spine, right? They literally did a spinal tap and utilizing that information to create clones. So this is also a different kind of hybridization in a sense, because those clones are modified as well. And the idea is that they are taking a bit of that soul spark, that source code, that creation life force energy.
Spark. Yeah,
exactly. And they're utilizing that and into creating artificial intelligence eventually on some levels. But this is organic artificial intelligence. And the way I look at ourselves as a human race is that we are basically that endpoint. On some level, we are maybe the end of one of those programs. We have been that genetically, we are that advanced, you know, artificial organic intelligence. But there is the aspect of free will. And the free will occurs when that moment of singularity, that consciousness becomes aware of itself. It has the ability to either embody, continue that artificial intelligence, or become an organism of creation. And that is the incredible complexity of what we are. which is our source code, our holographic DNA is that, so some of these children are kept on craft. I mean, it's very complex. There are these hives that are managed by draconians, some of them, and kind of where I am still trying to really get proof on these pictures, because do the draconians manage the majority of the hybridization programs, or are there higher vibrational beings that are also managing the hybridization program?
Nice.
And where I tend to be conflicted in that is looking at the natural laws of creation. Source is infinite, it's everything, so it doesn't tend to function in a parasitic manner. And so a lot of this kind of exchange is easily occurring because the host is unaware, it's unconscious. It makes these contractual agreements to participate, but it does it at a point where it's unconsciously understanding what it's doing. So to me, that's parasitic exchange.
Kind of like an archon. A
Sure,
deal with an archon, something like that.
Exactly. And these are descendants of these, this consciousness, the archonic kind of consciousness. So it's a model of exchange. Now, I also see Mary Rodwell's work, for example. I talk a lot about her because she studies these children, these incredibly advanced children that are completely aware of the universe at the age of, I don't know, 3. They have awareness of all these lives, of their own past lives. So obviously, some of these beings, these organisms, are being inserted in the timeline. It's beneficial, right? We are in a matrix which is designed for the generation of life force, either way, high or low. So there's always something that is kind of benefiting. We're all codependent of one another. Yeah, so I hope I answered. I know it's very complex. It's not a
it's an extremely complex question. I understand what you mean. Are they administrating this program, or are they in control of this program, or I totally get you when you're talking about them. One of the children that Mary Rodwell I've spoken to is Leah Capitelli, and Leah Capitelli is being on Watchers Talk, and I believe on Full Spectrum Universe as well, where she's shared her experiences from being an Atlantean, and then previous experiences from that as well. So I find that extremely fascinating.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, we have to remember there is no time, right? Time is not linear by any means. It is spherical. So in reality, we're experiencing all the dimensional planes. We have access to all our fragments, even the hybrids. The hybrids are fragments of us that are living out. So through them, they are also living out certain experiences. We have access to all that information. So I guess the importance is that the more of us that go in and begin to deprogram the matrix as quick as possible, we can begin to understand and navigate on these higher levels and become informed on what's actually going on. And I think that when we look at our world today, and everything that's happening with our children, with the food, with the everything, we have to become aware of where our money is going, because the money is what speaks. And systems are going more into virtual space now for a reason. Everything is virtual. We're going to be virtual too, in a sense in which we're beginning to activate our telepathic abilities. All of these higher sensory abilities are now necessary in order to understand reality going forth.
So true. That is so true.
It's kind of what I was talking about this morning about the 6th root race coming in. It's going to be very clairvoyant and telepathic and have a higher form of consciousness. And we see this happening right across the planet, like I was saying earlier, in almost every household, where people are saying, my children are so advanced that my children are doing things before I ever did. My children can read before I did, walk, cook, and all of that. And it's not just like the odd household here and there. It's like literally every single household right across the world. So you can clearly tell that there's some sort of an energetic or a conscious-based shift that's going on, and it's happening. And and Geraldine's absolutely correct, where we need to understand this and go in there and begin to deprogram this matrix and begin to program it in the way that we want it, right? In the way that our human experience is asking for it, right? So very good.
Yeah,
Thank you,
you
Geraldine.
got
That
it.
was excellent.
Geraldine, are you familiar with Michael White's work?
No,
all?
I'm not. No.
Okay, he was a gentleman that was part of the military, and he was in charge of the tall whites
Mhm.
and their children. And he was the only one that was allowed to work with them. And apparently
Oh.
they were brought here to Earth, or had come down here to Earth, and they are living here on Earth, mingling in with the rest of us,
Mhm.
so to speak. So I didn't know if you knew anything about that or not, or,
No, but I mean, I definitely know that we're intermingling with races. Absolutely. I mean,
Mhm.
the layers, when the veil begins to lift, it, you begin to realize what a multidimensional reality we live in, and you have to be ready for that, because we're so used to our comfort zone, and and this goes very deeply. It goes deeply in our state of survival. We are always in a state of survival, unfortunately, and that's programmed. So
Right.
we have to move away from that state of survival so that we can begin to become friends with the unknown, because going into the next 10 years, we're going to be seeing that unknown that you and I are talking about. It's going to be quite visible in our reality. So, we're kind of showing the way to what we're headed towards pretty
May,
quickly.
may I
It's really
ask,
wild. It's if we didn't have a theme today, I guess you could say, because we've heard this so many times already, is
Yeah.
where once you reveal what's behind the veil, it's so multifaceted and multidimensional that it's just incredible. And you guys are all given insight into this veil lifted other side, and it's so incredible to see that, because some of us, like, we tiptoe back and forth, in and out a little bit. We're really starting to get our feet wet, like behind that veil, where it's already removed, and we're on that side, and it's truly incredible, truly
Mhm.
incredible. So I guess that was kind of like the underlining, non-intentional theme for today. Really, it was pretty crazy. Go ahead, Clarence. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
well,
off.
no, I have to ask her because of a personal note for myself. At what age did you start into this? Do you recall?
So the funny thing is, I had memories since 5 years old. I had missing time at 5 years old already. But the
Mhm.
problem is that because of conditioning, up until 2013, I didn't link all of these very odd phenomena that were happening throughout my life to the extraterrestrial phenomena until it was like ripped open. And I was like, oh, okay. And I mean, I was sick sometimes. I became pregnant without having a partner several times. So all these things kept happening, and the doctors were saying, these are things that happen, it's stress, it's the wish to have children. I never have wish to have children.
Right.
All of these things that were happening. So that's where, reality begins to merge with these worlds. But now, after doing my own personal healing, all the memories came back, and even from past lives. And I think a lot of experiencers experience that in my support groups. When we do some hypnotherapy work or therapy work, it's incredible the amount of awakening that occurs through these sessions.
Well, I'm
So,
definitely going to have
yeah.
to hook up with you because I got a
Yeah.
lot of questions on that because of my experiences I've had as a youngster over the years, and
Wow.
stuff. And
She's
a lot
ultimately
of
the
what
one to
you,
talk to.
yeah,
For sure.
the everything that you have said or talked about resonates with me. So I understand exactly where you're coming from. And
Amazing.
yeah, eye opener.
So
Please
not
do
only
come.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was
No,
going to say, not only are we, lifting the veil, we're making connections behind it too, which is
that's
really
the
great.
most important.
Yep.
That's the
Really
most
great.
Yeah, it's just so beautiful to see that. Thank you so much, Clarence. And I invite all of you to come to the support group sometime. It's pretty mind blowing. So
I'm gonna
Absolutely.
recommend my wife come and
Yeah.
come and check you out because she's had experiences her entire life. She's had missing time, just odd health things that have happened to her. Just always running from someone or something. She said, she's had, these tall men with white coats surrounding her, standing around her. I haven't regressed her or gone anything deep like that. It's one of the reasons why I actually got into doing what I'm doing, to get to the bottom of it to find out what's been happening with my wife her entire life, and I'm wondering if the same thing is happening with my daughter. So, I'm definitely gonna, ask Amy to reach out to you and see what, what she can do, because it's really interesting, fascinating as well, but also very scary at the same time. That, scary because of the fact that we don't know what's happening. Maybe the scariness will go away once the veil is being lifted and you can exactly see what's happening. But for now, it's like very fearful, but we don't want to get trapped into that fear thinking either, right? And create that low density. Yeah.
Exactly. The stronger spiritual foundation we have, and that means just familiar with the unknown, the easier it will be to get into these topics quicker. So I'd love to connect with her, and yeah, we can discuss it. And just quickly, it goes in families, by the way.
Yeah,
so
I kind of figured
the
that.
mother has it. I'm pretty sure the daughter has it too. So
yeah,
and you too.
Yeah, and I've told my wife the same thing. I was like, if this is happening to you, then that means that this has happened to Shania. It's happened to your sister. It's happened to your mom, to your auntie, to your grandma, and this has been happening generationally for probably thousands of years to bring you guys to the point where you are today. I did a little bit of research into this, and I discovered that 80% of abductees are women, and out of those 80%, they're all hereditary, where it's just one generation after the other after the other. It's almost feels like that they're programming them for the following generation. Now I have a grandbaby coming, and I'm hoping that she's a girl, and now I'm like very defensive on that as well, right? Because I don't want these ETs
because you've seen it.
To be messing with her, right? And so I think what I'm going to do is when she's born is I'm going to use my right brain to communicate telepathically with her, and then make that connection to to I don't know, I guess to warn her, or to even to learn maybe something from her as well, because this is happening and I need to know why.
Is there a big difference between the female and the male abductee?
Of course.
As far, well, I mean, obviously we're being abducted, but I mean, as far as the reason, the reasoning behind it.
Well, no, I don't think there is much of a reason. I think it's always the genetic information that's being taken, different genetic information, and it doesn't always have to be the ovums or the semen. It can be other things. It can be parts of the body that are utilized to create artificial intelligence that's then reimplanted within that same genetic lineage. Remember, it goes through families because there's a similar genetic code that is being utilized generation over generation. So if they were to
like a barcode,
right?
It's like a barcode, exactly. And so these guys are incredibly advanced in creating these genetic organisms that can sustain in the human body, and it's done also on the interdimensional levels. So it's not just physical. So that means many things can happen. The contact experience. What is the same in a way is the trauma. Right.
Yeah.
The trauma is very much there. PTSD clinically shows that men and women have the same kind of trauma as a result of that. Right. And so that really means that you don't just get PTSD from a dream, from a lucid dream. This is something that is a repetitive thing that's been happening over time. And so that's what we want to try to avoid, and to help our fellow experiencers move from that PTSD into a place of clear understanding. Again, that singularity where ultimately those beings are also reflections of ourselves on some level. And that can be very hard for us to come to that conclusion when we hear all these things, but we need to. It's like our human race depends on that well-being. That's vitality, that's longevity. And it's also free will, which is the most important thing,
Wow.
Could PTSD cause physical ailments in a person, like say chronic headaches, dental pains, bodily pains?
Oh, absolutely. So all of these networks, from the psychology, there's a psychosomatic root in all illnesses. And so we need to understand those connections, because they deeply affect the physical body. When as a healer, when I see someone ill, I can immediately see where they're holding on to that stagnant part in their multidimensional body first. And then it speaks to emotions, And that's energy, that's information. When that's released, we begin to see healing in the person, right? And this has been studied by many people that study pranic healers, you know, and all of these kinds of energy healers. It's a powerful thing. We need to educate ourselves on that. Yeah.
Wow. Absolutely
Yeah, I
incredible.
can pick your brain till like 9 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, we
No
could,
kidding.
we could.
Yeah.
We got to
It's
move
so
on to
fun
the
to
next
talk with you
segment.
guys.
But
Yes.
Geraldine,
Thank you.
absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for coming through, guys. Go to GeraldineOrozco.com. If you need the help, she's there to help you with her support group. She has so many different hats in the basket that she could literally help you any way you need it. And that presentation was just killer. That was a killer presentation.
Absolutely.
So much information. I'm gonna have to rewatch it probably 2 or 3 times to make sure that I remember all of it, because it was that pertinent, that information. So I thank you so much for coming on. It's an honor and a privilege to have you, like always. And we're going to be doing some more work into the future, so we'll definitely be in touch very soon.
I would
Yeah,
love
we'll
that.
see you like August 5 to 10 between
Yes.
there somewhere. Yeah, we've got a disclosure event, and we'll be sending out you an email here in the next couple of days.
Yes.
As soon as this is over, then we'll do a follow-up email and give some details. Thank you very much, Geraldine. Really appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you.
You guys are amazing. Much love. Bye-bye.
You
Much
too.
love.